So I want to just go over who I was as a child because I feel like, my personality, the way I speak, everything down to my physical features. I used to have a lot more Asian looking eyes. And, I was just a completely, totally different person. I was very hopeful and youthful. I was so naive. The world had infinite potential. Back then, it did. But if you don't know, as a child, my parents had a fierce custody battle, right? My parents were my world to me. I wasn't really well adjusted. My parents never really socialized me properly around other children. I spent most of my days just like in my room with my toys and my own imagination. So when my parents divorced, I took it very harshly. I took it very harshly. But yeah, the custody battle, it pretty much split my home life into pretty much either a back and forth between my mom's place and my dad's place every week or every second week. And then it became every day or every second day. So my whole life started off as chaos, just being back and forth between homes. Um, I preferred my father's place because he cooked better food. I often thought my mom cooked me shitty food because she just didn't love me, but she just really wasn't good at cooking. It was only later in life that I found out she just does not cook good food because she probably just doesn't like me very much, right? She knows how much I don't like her food. But my father, he has a cooking background with Szechuan Chinese cuisine, right? My best friend actually, he was likely, he never knew his father, his real birth father, let's be honest. But he grew up in a Chinese restaurant. So that's why me and my old, best friend, my childhood friend, that's why we bonded so closely together. But for the most part, I was pretty much alone, right? I was pretty much just alone with my father and my mom, bouncing back and forth between their homes. And I didn't really realize why there was so much anxiety around food when I was a kid. That's because I only learned much later in life while being at Brookside Youth Detention Center and being on psych wards, both children's psych wards and adult psych wards. I found out that the orderlies and the nurses and the correctional officers, they all sex abuse food. So when in Canada and in the United States and in society in general, they say that only 1 to 2% of society has psychopaths, right? In jail, it's actually higher, probably upwards of 10%. But I think those numbers are way off. I think there should be new studies into psychopathy because I don't think people are searching for the right patterns, right? If a psychopath is someone who's fully willing to do psychological torture to damage someone for their own pleasure and satisfaction, that's a problem. And I think psychopathy could be probably much higher documented and calculated for if we understand just how common child sex abuse, pedophilia, and of course sex abusing food. Do you really want to know how gross it can get? It can get pretty fucking gross, right? And you're damaging people's fucking psychology. And it really comes down to, even on psych wards, dialectical behavior theory becomes, oh, well, we'll punish you over and over again. We'll find out your worst fears, your anxieties, and then we'll we'll sprinkle it with some weird sex abuse of food, and then we'll play these mental mind games with you, and then we'll torture you for not getting better or not having the willpower to be better when you know that this is just a psychological arrangement to torture you over and over again. That's what dialectical behavior theory really is when you're a psychopathic doctor or nurse. That's what happens. So that's when of course, when I moved to Toronto, I'm having all these other issues, right? I was just interviewed very, very briefly. They probably won't put my segment up, but I was interviewed by BlogTO. They are right in front of the Toronto Star building, so I was wondering if they're a subsidiary of the Toronto Star. But either way, they asked me a stupid ass fucking question, likely because they already know the answer. All these rich people in Toronto are kind of trying to judge me and, see who I am. So they asked me a question about like my money spending and saving habits, which is a rhetorical fucking question because I've completely just given up hope. What the question that they didn't ask me, the question they should have asked me is, why aren't you buying groceries on a daily basis? Well, the reason for that is because my food was sex abused as a child. In psych wards, right, as a child, in youth detention centers, and at home with my father. So after being assaulted in my apartment and being harassed by the police for 4 years, I knew that even if I installed the padlocks on my doors, I could stop these people from getting into my home when the padlocks are locked. But that was only if I'm at home. If I'm not at home, people could be sex abusing my food and trying to poison me and trying to fucking kill me. Right? My apartment staff won't do anything. The police won't do anything. I've already made a police report. Right? So who protects you when the police won't protect you? Right? And if they don't protect you, should you respect the authority of the law? There you go. Most likely not. Right? So the reason I don't buy groceries is because I only usually buy groceries for 1 or 2 days if I know I'm staying home. And it's very expensive. It's very expensive. Eating outside isn't also very healthy either, because even when you get a good amount of protein and, a veritable diet and all this stuff, well, there's a lot of sugar in that still, even if you get good food. So sugar and salt, eating outside becomes a health hazard, but eating at home, that also seems like a health hazard when you know that people are breaking into your apartment, right? So the psychological torture, it never stops. So if you want to know who I was as a kid, I was different. I had infinite potential, but I never got over my trauma and my pain, ever. It stopped me from making friends in high school. And then by the time I got out of high school, all I wanted was my friends, because they were the only people I felt safe with. Right? And now I've never had any love in my life. Never could hold down a job. Right? I was a completely different person. And if I had to do it all over again, if there's a second life, there's nirvana, or, life just repeats itself, I know I'm just going to be doomed to the same decisions. My life won't change. My father will still be a psychopathic pedophile, right? My mom's side of the family will never give a shit about me, right? Because I was half Chinese. They never give a fuck about me anyways, because I never fitted in with my family. My mom was a vulnerable narcissist. And yeah, I've just been fucking abused mentally by psychopathic and narcissistic people my entire life, whether professionally or at home. My life never would have changed. In high school, I did so much drugs and drinking. It's because I didn't want to remember all this stuff. I was constantly high and fucked up and not really aware of my situation. I was totally inebriated. Even before I really got a criminal record, countless times of just ending up in the hospital blackout drunk. Again and again and again, having to get my stomach pumped, having to almost die of alcohol poisoning several times. Yeah. My life was just a spiral into chaos my entire life, and people want to ask me why I ended up this way. I could never escape. I still can't. I never got over my trauma. And as I'm trying to figure out my living situation and move to a different place right now, I don't know. I'm just as confused as I started. Oh well.